Well, good afternoon, councillors and members of the public. I'd like to formally open the ordinary council meeting of the 26th of August 2021. Paul, I wonder if, would you do the opening karakia, please?
Yep, sure. He honore, he klore, he mangarongo ki te whenua whakaro pai ki ngā tangata katoa. Ha ngā ati atua, he ngā kauhau ki roto ki tēnā o mātou. Whakatungi o tō wairua tapu ki te awhena ki te tohu mai a mātou I tēnei wā a wangawanga. Āmene.
Amen.
Move on to item 2 on the agenda, and that's the apologies. Are there any apologies, please? Thank you. Move on. Item 3 on the agenda is the declarations of interest, and the declarations of interest have been circulated on team systems. If there's anything that you see in this agenda or future agendas that you have an interest different to the public in, please make sure you record it for both councils' benefit and your own. Are there any urgent items not on the agenda? Thank you. We'll move on to item 5 on the agenda, which is the minutes, approval of minutes of previous meetings. Move first to the ordinary council meeting minutes of the 29th of July 2021. The minutes have been circulated. There's been no request for changes. Are there any changes? I'd invite a councillor to move that the minutes of the ordinary council meeting held on the 29th of July 2021 be confirmed as a true and correct record of the meeting. Councillor Kennedy, thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Davidson, all those in favour?
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
I approve that my digital signature be added to the confirmed ordinary council meeting minutes of the 29th of July 2021. Move on to the meeting minutes to be received. The first one is the West Coast Wilderness Trail Subcommittee meeting, which was on the 13th of April 2021. Once again, they've been circulated. Any changes requested? I'd invite one of the councillors to move that the minutes of the West Coast Wilderness Trail Subcommittee meeting held on the 13th of April 2021 be received. Councillor Davidson, thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Cogan, those in favour?
Aye.
It's passed. Thank you. Move on to the Capital Projects and Tenders Committee meeting, which was on the 2nd of February 2021. The minutes have been circulated. There's been no request for changes. I'd invite a councillor to move that the minutes of the Capital Projects and Tenders Committee meeting held on the 2nd of February 2021 be received.
So move.
Deputy Mayor Carruthers, thank you. Councillor Hart, thank you. All those in favour?
Aye.
It's carried. Move on to the next one, which is the Extraordinary Capital Projects and Tenders Committee meeting of the 11th of March 2021. Once again, they've been circulated. There's been no requests for changes. Are there any requests for changes? No. Like so, councillor to move that the minutes of the Extraordinary Capital Projects and Tenders Committee meeting held on the 11th of March 2021 be received.
So move.
Do I have a mover?
So move.
Deputy Mayor Carruthers and seconder? Councillor Davidson, thank you. All those in favour?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Move on to the next one, which is the Extraordinary Capital Projects and Tenders Committee meeting on the 16th of April 2021. And before we move on, we appear to be sharing an agenda there somewhere, one of the councillors? Could you please unshare it so we can,
Oh, that might be me.
could well be, not
Why
sure
would
there
that-
were.
I've gone into screen sharing so I can see you and I can see the agenda. Would that be coming? Why would you be seeing that?
Yes, and well, of course, what it does to it cuts out everybody off the screen, which makes it difficult to manage the meeting.
How do I undo it? Let me have a look.
Just down the bottom, David, stop share, or up the top?
It says you are screen sharing, pause share, stop share.
Stop share.
Is that better?
Thanks, David. That's very good. We're on to the Extraordinary Capital Projects and Tenders Committee meeting of the 16th of April, 2021. The minutes have been shared and there's been no request for changes. Are there any requests? Thank you. Would council like to move that the minutes of the Extraordinary Capital Projects and Tenders Committee meeting held on the 16th of April 2021 be received? Do I have a mover?
I so move.
I'll second, your worship.
Councillor Hart, thank you. Councillor Martin, all those in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion's carried. And the final set of minutes is the Audit and Risk Committee meeting on the 11th of May 2021. The minutes have been circulated. There's been no request for changes. Would a council like to move that the minutes of the Audit and Risk Committee meeting held on the 11th of May 2021 be received?
I so move.
Councillor Hart, thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Cogan, thank you. All those in favour? Motion's carried. We now move on to item 6 on the agenda, which is the action list. And for those members of the public that are zoomed in and to councillors, it's on pages 6 to 10 of your agenda, and Simon Bastian, Chief Executive, will lead us through the action list.
Yeah, good afternoon, your worship and councillors. I'll just take you through the action list one by one and open up for questions at the end. Canary School, you'll be pleased to see a lot of activity is happening down there. So the program of work is underway. Obviously, COVID has stalled any further works, but that'll be picked up as soon as restrictions come off. Speed limit review. What I've proposed to do is bring a full transport update across multiple portfolios and subjects to the September council meeting. So that'll be a full presentation of a number of aspects of regulatory change, plus also the project works we're working on. Chinese gardens, flooding, still finalising the design with DOC, our partners, in terms of the lake level management. Once that's completed, that'll be a resource consent to regional council. Some of the design work is quite extensive, particularly the protection works for the diversion of the creek. So we've got to work through the contractor management side of that as well. Mark Davies was invited to today and he accepted, and he had quite a long portfolio of subjects he would like to present. We've actually pushed this back till September, mainly because of COVID impacts and ensuring that we have the ability to share that information one-on-one in a, I suppose, a face-to-face presentation. Kamara Gardens, we met with a community group 2 weeks ago and progressed in terms of what needs to happen yet. Our team is actually helping them draw up a request for tender document and scoping the works for that. And then we'll get that out for expressions of interest to start that work. Road naming policy, you'll see this on the agenda today. LTP1 action submissions emails, so they have been sent out now. Revelstoke trial stage 2. In terms of where we're at with that, so we've actually commissioned 2 contractors to do the design work in terms of the decking and the crossing. So that's underway at the moment, and we expect pricing and concept back by the end of next week. Fiona will then give a full update at the 9th of September planning meeting after consideration. This one's completed, the LTP Action 2, stopping the stop sign at the corner of Sewell and Hampton Street, that's been completed. Hokitika Wastewater Treatment Plant project workshop has been tentatively booked for the 21st of September with a wider stakeholder group. In terms of Old Christchurch Road, that is earmarked for any additional funding, if we do get any additional funding out of the impacts of COVID. And if not, we'll plan that through the annual plan process. Footpath forward plan, that's on today's agenda item. In terms of costs regarding the HQ and Paku Waitara building to bring it up to 100% national building standards, we have talked to the consultants, and to bring it up to 100%, we haven't done that work, and to do that work would add quite a bit of cost to the design work, and actually I don't think it'll be affordable. So we'll come back with a statement where we're at in terms of both options in the near future. Paku Waitara business case timeline. We've got some preliminary figures have been supplied with the structure. Still working on finalising, we'll bring that back as a report to council. New staff roles, that's been circulated to councillors. Cascade toilets extension, Councillor Davidson wanted to see the application, that's been provided for on Teams. We have sent a letter to Regional Council, and they've acknowledged that letter in terms of accelerating the works for the river protection works in Hokitika. We have engaged the expert in terms of relocating the 2 palm trees outside the swimming pool. And we note the regards to New Zealand Coastal Restoration Trust conference. We'll take that off the action list, but keep it on the agenda items for executive team to make sure we pick that up closer to the time. Happy to take questions, Your Worship.
Thanks, thanks, Simon. We'll go around the screen. Councillor Martin.
No, I have no questions. Thank you. Thanks, Simon, for the report.
Councillor Hart.
No, I have no questions. Very thorough report. Thanks, Simon.
Councillor Davidson.
Yeah, just a couple of questions, Simon. Just what's the estimate cost of the connection to the new toilets?
The connection of the sewage system?
Yes, yeah.
Oh, the sewage system is actually very cheap because it's right on the boundary we were proposing to put it. There is infrastructure already there. So I don't have the exact figure.
Okay.
But it wouldn't be significant.
Okay, thanks for that. And the other one, in terms of the one-way street, has there been any feedback that would cause any risk in the future so far to date?
To the revised plan?
Yes.
Not to me generally. I will follow up with my team, see if they've received anything subject to cause any major concerns, but I haven't heard anything, Councillor Davidson.
Thanks, Simon.
Paul.
No issues from me, thank you.
And from the Deep South, Councillor Hartshorn. It looks like a no. Deputy Mayor Carruthers.
No, I'm good, thank you.
From the most scenic place on the coast, Councillor Kennedy.
All good, thank you.
Councillor Cogan.
Yep, I've just got a question on the Ross Chinese Gardens, Simon. I just wanted, I emailed the other day just for an update on that. I know that we're looking at getting the resource consent going into the regional council. And the last I heard, it was only sort of a week or so off going in. Can you sort of give me an update on where that's at the current time?
No, I can't, but maybe Scott can, if you're happy to pass over to Scott.
I think my camera's off. I don't know whether you can see me now.
No.
No, so somebody's remotely cut my camera off. I'm terribly sorry. No, we don't have a response at the moment to that. Councillor Cogan, I'll come back to you out of the meeting and give you an update.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Anything else here, Councillor Cogan?
No, that's all. Thank you.
And Councillor Neal?
No, all good, thank you.
And Councillor Hart? Or have you rearranged yourself around there?
I'm all good, thanks.
That's awesome. Yeah. After the last meeting, when the work started on the Canary Crossing, I contacted the Canary School, as in 2018 they approached us with a plan on what is ultimately now being done. They would be delighted to be involved in a morning or a lunchtime celebration when the crossing is opened. So I've advised staff of that, and really want to thank Canary School for getting in behind it. All right, if there's nothing else there, with the exception of those matters that are going to be removed, request that a councillor like to move that the updated action list, less the agreed deletions, be received.
I'm happy to do that.
Councillor Cogan, Councillor Kennedy, all those in favour?
Aye.
Thank you. Move on to the next item on the agenda, which is number 7, and it's the forward works plan for Westland District footpaths. Something I know that you'll all be very happy to listen to. And we've got both Winnie and Scott. Scott, would you like to lead off and perhaps bring Winnie into it?
You're on mute, Scott. Can you take yourself off mute?
Sorry about that. I sounded so good from my end as well. I'd just like to say we're really pleased to have brought this presentation to you, and there's a lot of work that's gone into it from Winnie and her colleagues. The way we like to run this is Winnie's going to take a lead, taking you through the presentation itself, and then between us we will answer any questions that you've got coming out of that.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, hand you over to Winnie.
Hi, good afternoon all. So I'm here to present the forward works plan for footpaths in the Westland District. So just as you can see here on the first page, we've got some examples of things that we've seen while we've been out and about. So first up, we completed footpath condition ratings, and these were rating the footpaths from 1 to 5 based on the condition of them. So these were conducted in accordance with the IPWEA guidelines for footpaths and cycleways. So IPWEA is the Institute of Public Works Engineering for Australasia. So they're currently setting standards for asset management. So these ratings are assigned based on the level of percentage of damage for a percentage of the area. And so this is a really important part of the whole rating scheme, is that there might be a footpath that has got 2 meters of damage, but in the full length of it, it actually really only accounts for like 5% of the area. So therefore that footpath would actually be in relatively good condition. So these inspections were completed by Becca and WDC staff. And also like to clarify too that Westland DC are only responsible for footpaths on the state highway when they're under 80 kilometers per hour. We don't have a lot of footpaths in 80 kilometre per hour zones, mostly down in France, there are a few. So here down below, you can see our rating scheme. So we've got excellent, which is as new, very to very poor, which is where defects affect like over 50% of the footpath area. So for these, we've got examples. So excellent, we've got an example from Cron Street. Good, we've got an example from in Kumara. For average, I believe that is Ross. And for poor, we've got Park Street in Hokitika, and then for very poor, we've got Canary. So if we look at them spatially, we can plot them in our asset management system, RAM, and this shows what our conditions look like throughout the townships. So here on the left, we've got Kumara, and on the right, we have Ross. So as you can see, in Kumara, there's not a lot that are rated poor and very poor, but we found that in quite a lot of our townships, that a large issue that we face is moss and lichen. I guess that's understandable given the environment that we live in, but that typically does not affect the usage of the footpath, though it does make them look as though they are worse than what they actually are. So then we've got Hokitika and Canary. These inspections were completed by Becca. So we have got, as you can see in Hokitika, we've got a lot that are rated average and poor, whereas in Canary, majority are either poor or very poor. And then we've got Franz Alpine and Franz Joseph. Now, Franz Alpine is all relatively new and very good, whereas then Franz Joseph, most of it is also really good. We do have a lot of problem areas on Cowan Street. We then have Hennes Clearing and Haas Township. So as you can see, the back streets of Hennes Clearing aren't in great condition. Majority of the Haas Township is pretty good. There are some areas where there's quite a lot of moss and lichen. And also you'll see the areas in the red here that are not footpaths exactly, but they were in our system as gravel footpaths. So they will also need to be redone. We then have Fox Glacier, Harry Harry, and Watera. I apologize that some of these images are a little bit small. These townships are obviously a little bit more spread out than the other ones. So in Fox Glacier, we found that a lot of the main centre of town area is quite good. It's when you get further down Cook Flat Road that the footpaths start to worsen in condition. This was generally the same as what we found in Franz Joseph. So then for Harry Harry, Harry Harry is in very good condition generally. There are quite a few sections that are pretty bad in moss, and there are some areas up near the school that are not in great condition. We have then got Watera, and the main streets in Watera are also pretty good. It is really the back streets that aren't in the best condition. Sorry, I've skipped around here, apologize for that. So then if we go and we plot these results as a percentage of all of our footpaths, this is the kind of graph that we see. So as you can see, Hokitika has around 55% of our total footpaths. And you can see here that we've got 8% that are very poor, 21% that are poor, 36% are average, 25% are good, and 11% is excellent. So from this graph, you can kind of see that Canary and Ross are the townships that have the largest proportion of poor and very poor footpaths. So then after this, we went round and we did condition inspections. So this was taking our condition ratings to the next level and trying to determine what it was that we needed to do to these footpaths to improve their condition. So for this, we only focused on the poor and very poor rated footpaths, as we determined that these would pose the biggest risk, and they would also, there is no way that we could do all of the footpaths. So we focused on the worst ones. So upon inspections, we considered cracking, slipperiness, evenness, displacement, service structures, ponding, and just the general risk surrounding the footpath. We also used priority factors. So this helped us to categorize which footpaths needed to be done first and how we would set them out through our forward works plan. So this took the condition, which as you can see here, we've got a 1 to 5 condition rating, where 1 is excellent and 5 is very poor. So we multiplied this by a location factor when the footpath was within a 200-metre radius of these given locations. And then we also multiplied it by a pedestrian volume factor in the same way that we did with the location factor. We also considered some accessibility considerations as we had an LTP presentation on some issues with Hokitika footpaths. So we had some staff go out and experience these issues firsthand using a mobility scooter, and they did comment that the issues were quite significant and you definitely notice them more than what you do when walking. So we have also included the installation of grate crossings in this forward works plan to try and solve some of those issues. We've also been in contact with the Blind Foundation to investigate tactile crossings in Hokitika. We were scheduled to look at having a site visit, but obviously there's been no progress made on this now. So then it's also really important to clarify the difference between renewals and repairs and maintenance, which is the two budgets that we have to work with for footpaths. So for renewal, we consider this as replacing a footpath with a different material. So for example, it's replacing a chip seal vehicle crossing with a reinforced concrete vehicle crossing. So for this budget, Waka Kotahi contributed $71,000 per annum. In this, we applied for 100,000, but only got 71,000, and this is for the next 3 years. Repairs and maintenance is considered as either maintaining the existing footpaths or replacing it with the exact same material. So we could go out there and we could replace a concrete footpath with concrete, and that is considered repairs and maintenance. So Waka Kotahi contributed 76,300 to this. We did, however, apply for 100,000 once again, but did not get that. And then we've got the $100,000 contribution from council. So the forward works plan, we have put together this graph here. This table shows what our overall budget is per year, which is 176,000. And then what our budget is for renewals, which is 71,000. And then as you go down, you see how much we've allocated per year into putting into the footpaths that are poor and very poor. So we've got a total allocated of just over 450,000 and 50,000 for renewals. So the remaining budget in this is unallocated, and we can use that for discrete issues in some footpaths, etc. So we've also considered in this when it was more cost effective to completely replace a footpath compared to repairing it. This was generally the case for our chip seal and asphalt footpaths. However, the cost of concrete footpaths generally does not make them more efficient to replace them, but in most cases they're more difficult to repair. So also whenever we've committed to repairing a specific area of a footpath, we have also said that we would water blast this or moss removal, and that will hopefully help with some of the aesthetic issues. So these cost estimates that we used rates from the contract of transport, and we also used recent quotes. So if we look at our distribution of what we are aiming to do in this 3-year plan, you can see here the 3 graphs for each year. We've got the red line shows what our ideal scenario is if we were to equally split it all up based on the percentage of footpaths. So as you can see, in most locations, we are performing relatively close to that idealized line. We do have a few places where we are not quite meeting that. And then if we look here, we've got our distribution total over the whole 3 years. So you can see here that we are meeting our targets in most townships or not exceeding them, except for Canary, Hokitika, and slightly in Ross. This is because this was calculated based on the average of the area and the cost that we're spending. So this is definitely pulled and swayed just based on what footpaths we've got and what material they are, as concrete does cost a lot more to repair. So then if we go to our spatial distribution, as we did before, you can see here the blue lines all show where we have committed to repairing our footpaths. So you can see we added some in here at the end of Hokitika at the top end and up on Bonner Drive Hill, as these footpaths get extremely slippery in winter and in the rain. So we've committed to water blasting these. I also realized earlier that I had missed one down here on Tancred Street outside the Kiwi Centre. For here we've got Kumara and Ross, what we commit to do here. Some of this is for Kumara is a little bit extra to repair some of this, because I noticed there's been a contractor in there recently, and then also just doing some water blasting. We then have Franz Joseph, which is where we aim to complete most of the Cowan Street. You can see that along the state highway, although it's not in great condition, it is not included, because that section from the north end of Franz Joseph through to the school is in that 80-kilometre zone on the state highway, so therefore it's not our responsibility. We've then got Hennes Clearing in Haas Township. You can see that we are looking at doing the whole section of Marks Road from the corner of Tahi Tahi Street through until the motels, and doing some work on the back streets of Hennes Clearing. Then we've got Wataroa, Harry Harry and Franz Joseph. Oh, sorry, Fox Glacier. So yeah, you can see here what we propose to do. Quite a lot of it on the main street of Harry Harry is actually just water blasting, because that street is quite covered in moss, but it's actually in really good condition when you look at it. So then our next steps for this is to complete detailed scope of works, which we can then go out to tender with, and then also construction and implementation of what we've proposed to do. So we have an aim to try and start sealing, etc. in the summer, but this is obviously subject to contractor availability. So do we have any questions?
Look, Winnie, that's absolutely fabulous, and we've waited a long time, and it's very comprehensive. It's I'm going to say it's one of the best reports I think I've ever seen. I'll go around the table. Councillor Martin.
Yes, thanks, Scott and Winnie. It's great to have the facts. It's something we've been asking for many years, and it's good to get some cut through on this. So well done, team. Now that we've done the scoping, obviously there's detailed scoping to go, but I do have a question. I don't know if you can still share the slides, but in relation to the financial slides, in terms of budget, proposed budget spend per year, if you can just flick that back up. My question relates to, it looks like or appears to be an underspend, but I'm just trying to get an understanding of whether the Waka Kotahi funding is for 3 years and in fact we're overspending, or, sorry, it's disappeared again.
Yeah, sorry about that.
It'll be easier for me to talk to the numbers if they can be shared. So the 100,000 we push for in the LTP process is in, and is that factored in each year for the next 3 years?
Yes, it is factored in for each 3 years.
Yep, I'm sorry, it's still black. Might be on the last slide still, is it?
I'm not sure, sorry.
It might be showing your last slide, which I think was a black slide.
There's just a delay, Councillor Martin, so I think just put it up without going to full presentation, Winnie.
Yeah.
There we are. Yeah. So to just talk, you might not have the answer now, but the total allocation here, the 456,666, doesn't make sense to me in terms of the budgeted amount. So
Sorry, so that total allocated value that I've got there is totally over the whole 3 years, whereas the budget value that I've given is only for 1 year. So sorry, that is my mistake there.
Okay, so you're saying each year of the 3 years there's 176,000 to spend on R&M.
Yeah.
And then if we look at the next column, the renewals, that figure though is a figure over the life of the 3 years, right? The 71 is distributed over 3 years.
Yeah, so we always find that we underspend in renewals simply because we don't often replace footpaths with something different. So a lot of the costs that we do have are repairs and maintenance.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So I guess my question here is initially on the renewals, why are we forecasting to not spend the budget?
At this stage, we aren't forecasting, but I'm sure that there will be some areas where we can use that instead.
So it's just having a discretionary amount that can be applied should the need arises.
Yeah.
Should the need arise. Okay. It would just be.
Can I come in on that?
Sure.
The chair.
Yep.
When we did the analysis work for this, the first aspect of it was to identify what needed doing, and then the assessment was done as to which category it fits in. And it came out as most of it fitted within repairs and maintenance. So yeah, it does give us some flexibility on what we do with renewals.
Just through the chair, just a point of clarification, Winnie. The 71,000 is year on year, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
So there's quite a big underspend on the renewals program.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, right. Okay, sorry. Okay, so I thought the earlier slides indicated that the 71,000 was for 3 years. So there's 71,000 per annum, which was the PA, right, for each year. And we're proposing a significant underspending.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At this
So
stage,
definitely gives us scope to actually do some work in this space where we haven't. So that this is the first cut off the rank in terms of getting this process underway.
Yep.
I think year on year we'll revisit how much is remaining and allocate it.
Yeah, because when you think about some of those streets, also, I appreciate we've done the scoping, but the CBD was pretty much excluded in terms of the those old concrete areas that haven't yet been taken to the paved areas. So that I guess would be considered a renewal.
Yeah, so that is something that we can consider doing with that extra renewal budget.
Yeah, like around the hairdressers and stuff where people always say they trip and now it's, Revel Street. Okay, that's good to know.
Also, through the chair, just
sorry.
a point of clarification, we want to make sure we do spend this money because this is fully funded. So we will be spending every last cent.
That's what I was getting at, really, is trying to understand the intent is to still maximise the Waka Kotahi funding.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's just about saying at this stage, the scope to renewals are actually only 50,000 instead of 210,000.
Yeah, we will be putting together a wider piece of work on this. The primary focus of this was for the 3-year programme as identified. There will be a number of opportunities for us to spend the renewal money on paving. So as Simon said, we won't be sat here not spending money.
Yep, agreed. And I guess comment from me is it's all very good water blasting mossy, mouldy areas, but I think we need to be chemically treating those as well to give a better, to actually kill the moss and lichen that is and established in our footpaths. And there's examples of where that's been done around the town and on some of our assets where they've actually, then you get 2 years where you don't actually have to do anything to that footpath as opposed to having to water blast it every 6 months. So I don't know if that's been factored in, but I think water blasting is sort of is a quick fix, but I don't think it completely addresses the issues from my experience.
Yeah, so water blasting also includes treating those areas. We're just not sure yet what we're going to use to treat it, as we want it to be environmentally safe. So we'll do some testing on that before we go out and water blast areas.
Thanks, Winnie. Can you unshare that, please?
Yep, sure thing.
Thank you, Winnie and Scott and Simon. And that's all from me, Your Worship. I'm pleased to see it happening.
Councillor Davidson.
Yeah, thanks. Winnie, a really good report on that one. I've got a few questions. Does the maintenance work, does that also include the damaged curbing on the footpath?
It does in most cases. The curbing comes out of a different budget, so I haven't included that in the scope of works here.
Okay, and just back on the classification of the footpaths, are they when you're looking at renewals, are they a specified width and design?
So they would be the exact same size as what we've already got. So it's just replacing the existing with a new material, but keeping the same area and the same width.
Okay, and I take it that's concrete. We're looking
Not
at.
necessarily. It can be anything that we want to replace it with.
Okay, so what is the design for the renewals?
Sorry, we haven't gone that far into this plan yet.
Oh, okay. Right, so there'll be no costing on it for renewals yet?
No, just our estimates that we've got presented.
Okay, thank you.
Paul.
Great report. Thank you, and so well thought out. Bit lousy from NZTA, I have to say. I just wondered about, and Ross at the LTP hearing, the Ross Community Society had offered to help with, specifically with footpaths, and this could be factored in and done at a cheaper rate. They were looking at the possibility of working bees, etc.
Just through your worship, can I pick that one up? So obviously with detailed design and also tendering process, be quite keen to look at how we can leverage their volunteer work in the tender process. You know, we could stipulate that the person working within the relevant townships engages with the volunteer group to see how we can leverage cost savings. It's pretty hard because the tender process, we need to have obviously all the right mechanisms for the health and safety components and the right qualifications to be able to award the contracts. A lot of these volunteer groups won't have that capability to deliver that. So I think we can work alongside a main contractor to support it.
Okay. Happy with that, Paul? Thank you. Councillor Hartshall, how's it looking for friends?
Yeah, no, it's looking pretty good. There's a lot of work gone into it, and thank you very much for that. There's just a couple of areas here that I thought were quite bad up around the service station that aren't on there. We could just have a look at that, but no, it's pleased to see.
Is it possible that Winnie pointed out that because the main road through France is NZTA, is it possible that those footpaths are not included for that reason? Winnie, could you answer that?
No, so that footpath outside the service station there was rated as average. So therefore we haven't had a look further into that as we only considered the poor and very poor. But that is also part of the reason why we have got that unallocated budget, is to look at things like that.
Great stuff. You happy there, Councillor Hartshall?
Yeah, no, that's fine. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Carruthers.
Thanks, Your Worship. Winnie, if my recollection's correct, the percentage of footpaths that were average, good or excellent was about 70%, and poor and very poor a bit less than 30. I was actually quite encouraged by that. I thought from what I'd heard previously that our footpaths were all pretty much shot. So in your view, is that a reasonably good outcome for the district, that proportion of our footpath stock is in that condition, and how might that compare with other similar districts?
Yeah, so I think that is a really good reflection of our footpaths. We definitely do have some of those ones in the average that section that could have some work done to them to make them better. And that's things that we will definitely look at. I can't comment on how that compares to other districts. Sorry about that.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Kennedy.
Yeah, hey, thank you. Thanks for that, Winnie. I do have a couple of questions for you. So in this the Footpaths review, what was the best performing surface?
So the best performing surface, I would say, would be concrete.
Yeah.
Definitely find it doesn't show moss and lichen like the chip seal and the asphalt footpaths does, but quite a lot of our old footpaths that we have settled quite a lot when they've done it in slabs. So that would be the only downfall of that, is that they can have quite a lot of differential settlement, which poses quite a lot of tripping hazards. But yeah, in general, I would say that they probably behave the best. Even in situations where they're cracked, it generally doesn't actually affect the usability.
Cool. And you mentioned that the cost of, because obviously there's a lot of maintenance, which is like for like, and you mentioned that the cost is, well, it's cheaper just to replace a chip seal one with a chip seal one. So what's the differential in cost there? Like, is it twice as much to do a concrete footpath, or 3 times?
I would say
or
more than twice as much. So we've got rates for concrete, it's $96 per square meter, whereas then for chip seal we go down to like 26, like less than $30 per square meter.
Righto, so we're talking a quarter of the price.
Yeah.
Now, because I'm thinking long term, is a concrete footpath, in terms of its, well, like you say, it's less likely to show up moss and lichen and all the nasties which people visually appealing. Is a concrete footpath likely to last 4 times as long?
I would say yes, it is.
More than 4 times as long?
Oh, I'm not sure about that. I'd have to get back to you on that, but yeah.
So if it's likely to be better, it's actually relatively, if it lasts 4 times as long, we're probably better off running concrete for future long term in the district, are we not?
Yeah, we can definitely look into that. That will probably quite significantly change the scope of works. But that is something that we could consider.
What I'm too, because obviously starting at the worst footpaths first, beautiful, rather than just replacing them with this is my thinking, replacing with like for like, which is shown wear and worn out. Why don't we look at improving the footpaths as we go, rather than just keeping it as we were? But hey, thanks, Winnie. I didn't mean to ask you questions.
Your worship.
No, thank you. Definitely a great comment.
Just your worship, just to comment on that. So obviously it comes down to users and how many users are trafficking across the footpath. So based on the model that Winnie's talked about, the 3, the poor, the hazard rating, or the condition rating, plus the usability rating, definitely concrete makes sense around the high traffic areas. So all that has to be weighted into that factor. And also, if we do have to put in new footpaths or extending footpaths, I think the philosophy would be to look at long-term strategies. So like concrete for any new renewals program. Or
yeah, I suppose I'd actually, let's budget for maintaining the concrete footpath, and the rest of it goes into renewals. Is in the long-term picture, I think would be better. Just my thoughts. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Kennedy. Councillor Cogan.
Yeah, awesome work, Winnie. Oh my God, very relieved to see that report come up on the footpaths, and very impressed with the way you actually managed to visually outline, clear mapping around what areas and the grade of those areas, which is awesome. I guess from my perspective, and I'm talking on probably behalf of the Ross and the Kamara committees at the moment, because Ross, this is a big concern, particularly for them down there with their footpaths. is it possible that I can ask, now that we have got this in place, that yourself or someone from council will be able to just print out for each area, specific area, what the intention will be for the next 3 years, and actually organise to come along and speak at the local area groups, which are normally once a month, because I think that'll be a great opportunity, rather than us relay on to them, you know, to have you guys there speaking so that they can speak back to you. I do know with Ross, as was brought up earlier, they did intimate that they would be keen to, you know, help with some of the works to, you know, save some of the cost, which will be great in the bigger picture. But I also wonder if they save some of the cost in their particular area in one area by doing some of it themselves, does that mean that they're then allocated further funding to do a little bit more in some of the maybe average areas of their townships to offset some of their budget?
Yeah, so that's definitely something that we can look into. It is really good that the community wants to contribute to this program too. That will definitely help save costs. And yes, I think presenting to the communities individually would also be a really good idea with this project.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yeah, that would be awesome. Thanks, Winnie. Great work.
Councillor Neil.
Thanks, Winnie. And as everyone else has said, great report. And we've certainly been waiting for a long time to have a really good assessment on where we're at. So thank you. Just a few questions. Did you use Samara's list that she presented at the consultation?
Yes, we did.
So they've all been checked off. That's fantastic. And presumably, if there is an excellent footpath but has a very big hole in it, that's where the money that hasn't been allocated yet would be used?
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah. Cool. And the reporting back to Wakakotahi for Franz Joseph to the school, do you do that? Say, look, we've done these assessments, we've noticed that that one's really poor, can you please sort it out?
We definitely can.
Excellent. And just one more thing, talking about spraying the footpaths, and this is slightly off topic, is that with glyphosates potentially? I'm not very knowledgeable on this area, but I know there's been a lot in the news lately about beekeepers and the glyphosates were selling honey to Japan. I'd be quite interested to know more about what we do use over all areas of the council, but happy to wait for that to be spoken about some other time too.
Yeah, so I haven't had a good look into that yet. I was in contact with some of our contractors, but haven't had any replies yet as to that. So like I said earlier, we will be testing what works best, but also having an environmentally conscious idea on it all.
Thank you. Sorry.
Just through the chair, definitely some of our larger contractors will have some of these eco-friendly type chemicals that we can, or potentially not even chemicals, that we can touch base with. I know that Fulton Hogan would already be using some of those in some areas.
Scott.
Through the chair, if I can, we have had some preliminary discussions, and there's a balance between getting something that's actually strong enough to kill the stuff, but also what it then does to what the surface is like underneath. So there's a balanced judgment that we've got to make, but we are talking to our partners about this.
Thanks, Scott. Winnie, can I suggest that offline you keep in contact with Councillor Neil in relation to her query, because it's obviously quite a big subject.
Yes, definitely.
Thanks, Winnie, and Scott, also great report and really good to see all that. Thank you.
And Councillor Hart.
Yeah, thanks team, for a huge piece of work there, and I had similar questions to Councillor Martin around the Waka Kotahi funding, so that's all been answered. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Well, I've got to say that, Winnie, your presentation was excellent and the supporting documentation, just great. So team leader, Scott. Thank you, Scott. That's something that we as councillors have been waiting for quite some time. It's a great start. Sorry, Simon.
Yeah, just through your worship, great work, Winnie and Scott. This just shows the value of having the resources available in the assets team to do this work. I do plan to also like to extend this to the reseal contracts so that councillors know which roads may be being done as well over the next 3 years, and potentially culverts and drains, etc. So Winnie's role is all around assets and getting assets criticality rated and putting it into a database to create the work program. So we'll see more of this as we develop.
Well, Winnie, you're officially an asset.
Thanks, Bruce.
Councillors, invite councillor to move that the presentation from the Group Manager District Assets and the Council Engineer from Westland District Council be received. Do I have a mover?
Move that.
Yep.
Councillor Martin, and I missed the second one there. Who was the seconder? Sorry, Councillor Kennedy, thank you. All those in favour?
Aye.
Motion's carried. Winnie, just great job. Right, we'll move on to the next item of the agenda, which is item 8, and it's the staff reports. And we'll move first to the financial performance for July 2021. And for those that are watching the Zoom meeting and for councillors, it's on pages 11 to 22 of your agenda. And Leslie Crichton, the Group Manager Corporate Services, will lead the discussion. All yours, Leslie.
Good afternoon, Your Worship, councillors. This report is for the first month of the new financial year to the end of July 2021. I'll take the report as read and answer any questions.
Thank you. We'll start up at Councillor Martin.
Thanks for the report. 1 month into the financial year, no questions from me. Well done, team.
Councillor Davidson.
No questions, thank you.
Paul.
Nothing from me, thanks.
Councillor Hartshorn.
No, nothing from me, sir.
Deputy Mayor Carruthers. Councillor Cogan.
No, nothing for me, thank you.
And Councillor Neal.
No, nothing. Thanks very much for the report, Leslie.
And as qualified accountant, we'll let the wrap up go to Councillor Hart.
Thank you, Your Worship. Leslie, just a question on, where was I? Just on the rates and the water, I think it's the metered water. And why did we budget so different for that when we knew that that was potentially going to be an issue? Because I think it was 53,000 variants for that, just for that month.
Sorry, are you talking about the metered water?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we can only base it on estimates of what we think that usage will be, but it's generally over the 12-month period, so there will be timing differences on that as well.
Okay.
So some of this could be timing rather than just being that we're just not going to get that revenue.
Yeah, and just I think it's a similar answer around the other expenses. There seems to be quite a large amount of invoices outstanding. Is that just creditors being late getting them to us, or timing of we cut off our system obviously at a certain point in time? Is that why there's quite a substantial variance of 264, I think?
Yeah, what we tend to do for the first couple of months is to actually accrue to budget, because we do have quite an overlap with what we're doing with the previous financial year as well. So we do get a delay from creditors getting in their invoices, and also from staff setting up new purchase orders and actually processing those invoices. So there is a bit of a timing difference there. Again, the first few months are generally, there's quite a few timing differences when we're actually accounting for our revenues and expenses. And this again will sort of come closer to budget as we move along the year, and which will turn into any variances probably being true variances rather than timing differences.
Sure. No, thank you. Thanks to your team for the report.
And Councillor Kennedy, you're right there? Great stuff. Look, a very clear report again, Leslie. Thanks so much for that. Councillor Hart, would you be prepared to move that the presentation from the group manager, that the financial report for the July 2021 be received?
Yeah, so move that.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Neal, thank you very much. All those in favour? Thanks, Leslie. It's always good to see your reports there. They're very clear and they're easy to understand.
Thank you. I'll let the team know.
Move on to the next item on the agenda, which is an application to install a plaque from Seroptimists to commemorate 100 years in New Zealand. And for those watching and for councillors, it's on pages 23 to 35 of your agenda. And I'd invite Scott Baxendale, Group Manager, District Assets, to present the report.
Thank you. I'll take the report as read, but before I ask for questions, following the publication of the report, we were actually contacted by Sue Peterson from the Seroptimists, and she's advised that their favoured option is actually option 1 and not option 2, which is what we recommended. Actually, both options are acceptable to officers within the council. So my suggestion to councillors would be to actually accept either option and give the Seroptimists a choice, and then we'll tie it up in a memorandum of understanding with them.
Thank you, Scott. Open for discussion. And Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Worship. Thanks, Scott. Yep. Pretty straightforward report. It's been assessed against our policy. Seroptimists have identified their preference being the storyboard in Weld Lane, so I support the installation of the storyboard.
Councillor Davidson.
Yeah, I support what they're presenting, those two options. I'll leave it up to them.
Thank you. And Paul?
Well, I support the plaque, and the storyboard I thought was out of proportion, really. I mean, if it was a local centenary, that'd be a different matter. But it's an international centenary. It'd be like putting up a storyboard for the to celebrate the centenary of Rotary, for instance. So my preference is very much for the plaque. It's less obtrusive. And I think also the council needs to guard against a proliferation of too many plaques and memorials, etc. But this one as a plaque alongside the Women of Westland one is, would be no problem at all.
Councillor Hartshorn.
Yes, no, I support both options and the plaque and the storyboard. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Carruthers.
I have to agree with what Paul just said. I think the plaque is the better option. We do have to be careful we don't set precedents here that every group who wants to can put these sorts of memorials in prominent places around the town. We just have to be a wee bit careful about that. So my preference is certainly for the plaque. I think it's much more appropriate than a storyboard.
Councillor Cogan.
I fully support the plaque. I think the plaque is a great idea, and it's really good to be able to acknowledge people like our local Seroptimists that put a lot of time and energy into our communities. I think I'm the same, I have to say, about the storyboard, because, yeah, if we decide on a storyboard for them, do we set a precedent that, you know, everybody else would be able to do that as well? And then where do we find the space for all of this? When it's specifically a local thing to recognise, yes, but when it becomes like a, you know, a celebration of worldwide, I'm not convinced on the story.
Councillor Neal.
Thanks, Bruce. Yeah, likewise, I preferred the plaque to the storyboard. I didn't really think that the storyboard is telling a story, and it's out of proportion size-wise, and it placed there, it looks like it's referring to other things around it, which it's actually not, especially if we're going to continue with the art works down there. Whereas the plaque, that fits in with the Woman of Westland sculpture, the seat, and also the Woman of Westland, the Y plaque. So yeah, I definitely prefer the plaque. If it was going to be a storyboard, I think we'd need to relook at where it was going and the reasons for it. And even the plaque, it would be good to look at it a bit more fully, just as to the shaping of it. Is it going to be identical to the one next to it, or going to have a bit more shape to it, or whatever? But certainly support the plaque. Thank you.
Councillor Kennedy.
Yeah, look, I wasn't that bothered by either, to be fair, but Paul and subsequently Deputy Mayor Carruthers raised some very valid points, and I support the plaque.
Councillor Hart.
Yeah, thanks for the report. Yeah, I support the plaque as well. I just had some of the concerns around space and potential further plaques being put there in the future. So yeah, I support the plaque.
Okay, we've got a sort of a consensus there. For me, I support the request that Sir Optimus made in relation to the panel, but we need to test the table. Can I suggest that a councillor moves a recommendation?
I'm pleased to move, Your Worship, that the council accept the offer of Sir Optimus to install a plaque at the designated spot in Weld Lane.
And do I have a seconder for that?
Second that.
Councillor Neal. All those in favour, please raise your hands. So we have 5 there. The motion is carried. Thank you for that. We now move on to the next item of the agenda, which is the reviewed road naming policy. And for those watching...
Sorry, Worship, you haven't moved to receive the report, or have you?
No, I haven't. You're quite right. On that basis, I'll move that council receives the report. And do I have a seconder? Councillor Neal, thank you. Those in favour?
I'm in favour. Can I just ask a question or clarify something, please, Your Worship?
Please do.
So my understanding of this process should have been staff assess it based on the policy, and then we get a recommendation. What's happened again today is we've received 2 recommendations, or 1 recommendation in writing and 1 verbally at the meeting, and we've put our own personal preferences against those 2 options. So what I would like to see in the future is staff present an option to council, because otherwise we may as well not have the policy, and we might as well just have all requests come to councillors and we decide what we prefer, which is the reason why we wrote the policy.
But isn't that our role, though, Latham?
Not to just, well, we don't. I think personally we should revoke the policy then, the public art policy, because it gives really clear direction from governance how applications should be assessed, and then the levels of approval needed, and when a concept's identified and gone through a staff process, it comes to governance for approval, not kind of have an internal staff process. We don't really run, but it appears that the process that happened here led to us getting a written recommendation, which has actually been contradicted on the day with a verbal update. So it's
Well, I think,
too messy.
look, I think in fairness, the matter's been considered. The options have been put to councillors. The majority of councillors have agreed on a particular option, which is the concrete-based plaque. I don't know that we can go any further than that. It appears that democracy is taking care of the process. So if we could move on to the next item, which is the reviewed road naming policy, and it's on pages 36 to 51 of your agenda. And I'll hand it over to Scott Baxendale, Group Manager, District Assets.
Hello, thank you for that. I'm going to take the document as having been read by councillors, and I'll be happy to take any questions that come out of that.
Thanks, Scott. So this is for the new road naming policy 2021. We'll open it for discussion. Councillor Martin.
Thanks for the updated report, Scott. It's a lot more comprehensive than the previous policy. So I note that. I just wondered, there's a reference in here on to consultation processes. So and I don't know that they're contradictory, but I think they might not be clear when it talks about new roads and the requirement for the proposer of the new road or the subdivision developer to undertake consultation at that level with mana whenua or with iwi. And then it also refers later in the policy to them needing to do that and evidence that before submitting it to council. But my understanding of the discussion was there's going to be some sort of process where council staff liaised with mana whenua. Can you just clarify exactly talk me through, if an applicant comes up with a name, what's their responsibility in terms of consultation with iwi?
Yeah,
that's just a Maori name though, Latham, isn't it?
But that's what I'm trying to clarify. Is it the use of a Māori name, or is it, because what we had, this doesn't, if it is just that when a te reo Māori name is used, it doesn't actually fix what happened earlier this year, because a te reo Māori name wasn't proposed.
I think this specifically says when a Maori name is proposed, but I also noted that it seems cumbersome procedure because at one stage, at one point it says you have to consult with Ngāi Tahu, and then another section with local iwi, it doesn't seem to be very coherent in relation to that.
Could I, before I go to you, Councillor Kendi, could I seek some advice from TC, please?
Thank you, Your Worship. So in terms of the policy, in answer to Councillor Martin's first query, yes, there is an intent for the developers to engage with Māori in the first instance, but as developers, that will be picked up as part of the resource consent process. So that's where they will be directed in terms of if there are things that relate to a Māori aspect in terms of the land and where new roads may be being proposed that they are engaging with. And just with any other developer, then the contacts would be provided to them. In terms of the overall arching intent of the policy following previous reports to council, it has been in discussion with our Māori representatives in terms of our runanga, and they are the ones that have also requested that there be some occasions where it's not necessarily just at runanga level, it may be at the wider Ngāi Tahu level as well. So that's why there's been reference to both levels within the policy.
Does that assist?
No, Not really. I'm just trying to understand. Okay, I can understand the resource consent process. So that's when an applicant puts in a resource consent, the staff will say, have you considered that at this stage, because it's got significance to mana whenua, you need to go and consult with them. Here's their details, right? So that's one process. But if it's not, if there's a name like Hall Road suggested, is there a requirement that there is engagement with mana whenua prior to council laws approving that road name or street name or avenue name, whatever it turns out to be?
In terms of new names or renaming of existing roads, yes, that's what the policy allows for.
Allows for or requires?
So, well, requires.
It's that, but sorry, just to, I'm not trying to be pedantic on this. I'm trying to just think about it in terms of from a developer's perspective and us as actually what we're involved in as governance. On page 41, 4.8.2, it says council shall consult with mana whenua, with Potini Ngāi Tahu. So do we receive the name and then we go and do that at operational staff level?
Sorry, I was just pulling that up. So that's in terms of decisions that come through other processes as well. So the policy is not just referring to developers. It's the same in terms of new roads or, as you may be aware, in terms of a current road out to Kamara. The same thing, it's not through new developers. It's this existing road with a name and there's a proposal to come to council to change it. Because that's not through a developer, then council will take that effort as part of the policy where there is a need to consult with Māori before we then bring a report to council to say, hey, here's an idea, member of the public's come and wants to change it to this name. If we do that, we'll risk being in the same situation we have with previous reports. So that's a requirement for the council to ensure that consultations occurring in line with the policy.
Okay, thank you. That makes sense. Now I understand that. That context is really good. It'd be good to add some of that detail, I think, to the policy.
Yeah, Councillor Kennedy.
Sorry, just on, so in the report and the policy 4.8.2 about having to engage with Ngāti Waiwai and Makawhio, the appropriateness of any name recommended for new and unnamed roads. Are we effectively saying it's the decision lies with iwi into the naming of a road? Is that?
No, what it means is that we're just ensuring consultation has taken place so that considerations may be given towards either alternatives or whether iwi are happy with the name that's being proposed. But even if not necessarily happy, as long as it doesn't infringe on anything that's of significance from a Māori or cultural perspective, then the policy allows that consideration.
I think that's pretty clear, TC. You happy with that, Councillor Kennedy?
Oh, yeah, I suppose. Yeah.
Moving round, where do we get to? Councillor Davidson.
No, I'm all good with that. Thank you.
Paul.
Thank you. Yeah, I thought it was very clear compared to what was previously in place. Just to clarify, that Potini Ngāi Tahu are not seeking to have power of veto over naming rights. All we want is just to be able to be consulted at the appropriate time, so that we can steer them in the right direction. If it's a site that might be more appropriate with a local Māori name, or if there is a Māori name that's used, and then it does need to be filtered.
Makes perfect sense. Councillor Hartshorn.
Just, yeah, through the chair. No, I'm happy with that. That's all good as gold. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Carruthers.
Nothing further, Your Worship. Thank you.
Councillor Cogan.
No, I really appreciate the work you've put into this, TC. I mean, it's certainly, it's a lot more detailed now around that road naming, and so hopefully we won't be back in the same issue as we were, and people will know also moving forward with subdivisions and stuff as well, that process that has to happen you know, before they come to council for consents.
And Councillor Neil.
Happy with it. Thanks, TC.
Councillor Kennedy, anything else there that you'd like to add?
Oh no, I just as long as what happened a few months back doesn't happen again, I'm happy.
And Councillor Hart.
No, nothing further. Thanks for the report. It's timely given what we had a couple of months ago. So thanks for the work in that space.
Yes, thank you, Scott and TC. This will be much more acceptable long term than what we had previously. I'd invite a councillor to move A, that council receive the report, and B, that council adopt the new road naming policy as attached to this report, Appendix 1, and revoke the existing policy on road naming 2018, Appendix 2. Do I have a mover? Councillor Cogan, thank you very much. And Councillor Hart, all those in favour?
Aye.
Motion's carried. Thank you. Thanks for that, Scott. Move on to the next item of the agenda, which is the Three Waters Reform engagement process. For those that are zoomed in, and councillors, it's on pages 52 to 55 of your agenda. And Scott Baxendale, Group Manager, District Assets, will drive us through the report.
Thank you for that. As you're aware, there's quite a lot of discussion and activity in the Three Waters space at the moment, and I will present this report to council on the basis that you've read it, and I'm quite happy to take questions.
Thanks, Scott. I'll open it up for discussion. Councillor Martin.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, and Scott, for the report. This is a bit of a moving feast, I think. My questions in relation to this is actually what the engagement process could look like. Obviously, we've got the survey, but I'm just aware that, you know, I don't believe we're going to be able to do a lot of face-to-face consultation and engagement. And I think the requirement to undertake this consultation as per the government's timeframe is unrealistic now with the lockdown. It would be nice to think that we can be in a position to talk to our communities. And I guess that's a bigger discussion than just the recommendations in this report about, and I know as Worship's advocating with some of the mayors from the coast and chairs to see a pause put on the consultation process. So it's two-pronged really. It's ensuring that we use this time the best we can, but still seek a pause. Is my gut feel on how we should proceed with this.
Councillor Davidson.
Just through Your Worship, before you move on, just some points of clarification. This isn't the consultation process. So the consultation process won't happen until the 2-month review has been completed. So until the end of September, we're in a review process. There's no formal consultation required by government at all at this stage. What we're seeking to do with this engagement process, it's not consultation but engagement, is to get the feeling of the community. There will be another consultation round happening once we've evaluated the information and finalised, I suppose, what the impacts on our council will be, which will be a report back to council in September.
Councillor Davidson.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I certainly support the engagement. Thank you.
Paul.
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, I support the engagement, though. I mean, of all the half-baked ideas that have come out of this government, this is the worst, in my view. Yeah, they've cajoled and they've bribed and carried on about it, and I do fear that they're going to probably pull out another card out of the back pocket when they find the resistance from the councils is too much, and that will be to force all the councils to opt in. So it might all be futile anyway. But I do think that I agree with the Mayor that there needs to be engagement. There needs to be full consultation. The idea of a binding referendum is certainly worth considering, but it's something that the government hasn't even considered. You know, they're just ramming it down our throats, and it doesn't sit well with. It seems a growing number of councils every day. Yeah, I mean, you just need to use the hackneyed old expression: if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And honestly, in Westland, you know, show us where it's broken. You know what happened in Havelock North and down in North Otago. You know, sure, that has to be addressed, but whoever sat in Wellington and dreamed up some scheme that we'll nationalise the whole thing, because it's only a step away from nationalisation in my view, which is pure socialism. But whoever dreamed up that idea obviously was a city dweller that doesn't have no idea of how the rest of New Zealand lives. Come and have a look and have a taste of water out of Lake Canary. No, so I agree with engagement.
Councillor Hartshorn.
Yes, thanks, Your Worship. I can't really add to what Paul said, but I 100% agree with Paul.
Deputy Mayor Carruthers.
Yep, happy to be involved in engagement. I'm not certain that this sort of survey form takes us anywhere, personally, unless we decide that we need a certain number of responses for it to tell us anything. When I think, Simon, you used the expression gauge the feeling of the community. How many responses represents the feeling of the community? That's my question. If we get 10 responses, does that tell us anything? So I'm happy to be involved in a process of engagement. I'm not certain these sort of survey forms help us in any direction.
Just through Your Worship, we obviously following a lot of other councils are also doing this engagement process. You may have seen yesterday that Christchurch City Council actually going out with a survey to all their residents as well. We're trying to do this and get the word out to as many people as we can. This will be mail outs plus also radio ads, etc., to reach as far as we can to encourage people to have their say. We do have a tight turnaround time once again to do this, but we're quite keen to make sure we get out as wide as we can, get those submissions or those engagement forms back, and they can put anything they like on there in terms of their feedback. From there, we'll get a sense in terms of where the direction's heading. This is, once again, not consultation, but it steers us in a direction and gives us the opportunity to answer some questions we may not have thought about before. That's where then can feed back to government.
Except all that, my question is simply around how many responses actually tells you anything.
Yeah, obviously the more the better. And you can't base a final decision on 10 or 20% of the population. This is why potentially a referendum would be the most logical way to go. But what we're trying to do is reach the community. We did plan to do roadshows, as you recall, which actually helps getting people in front of us to talk about the subject. That will be part of the consultation process.
But even a referendum on local body issues or local government issues gets no traction at all. People are not interested and don't respond and don't vote on them.
I think this topic is quite topical, considering the amount of advertising that's happening by government themselves. Everyone actually is aware of this. A lot of the previous, I suppose, local government consultation processes are quite insular in terms of their reach. So, but this is actually quite out there in the public eye.
Councillor Cogan.
I've got a couple of things on this. The first one is, haven't government already made their mind up, and they're just doing this out of a courtesy now to let us all think we have a say. I definitely believe that there needs to be engagement and consultation, and I fully support road shows. I'm also the same. I'm not convinced with surveys at all, because it doesn't always necessarily encourage participation when a piece of paper just turns up in the mail. And also, I'm not convinced at the moment. I know there's a lot of information out there from the government around Three Waters, but to me, there's almost a little bit too much information. And I think that we as a district need to be more specific around the specific effects on our district and how that will affect everybody. So if we're going to be sending out information, it needs to give them the facts of, well, here are the pros and here are the cons. But, you know, the cons are that, you know, because we already know there's $120 million that we have in already in our Three Waters and assets, you know, and we're going to get offered $11 million for that. Well, how does that figure? You know, so yeah, I think we have to be able to help assist people to understand the impact, the physical impact on them in our area and what that will look like.
Just to the point of clarification, this questionnaire won't go out on its own. It goes out with a flyer with all the relevant information. So there's another piece of work we're doing to actually finalise that release. So it already goes with a lot of information that we're pulling together now.
Okay, so, and that's easy enough information for people to follow.
Yeah, it's already been drafted. It's just waiting for some final financials.
Okay, it'd be interesting to see what that looks like, because it's important that people just.
I think Councillor, I think the worship sent it out on an email a few days ago for you guys to consider.
Okay. Yeah.
Councillor Neil.
Thank you, Bruce. Yeah, like Jenny was saying, want to know that the information is going out with the survey, so that's good to hear. Thank you, Simon. And like David was saying, it's really hard to get input from the wider community on this. I don't know how much knowledge is out there. I think it varies hugely, and I think people, they take in a wee bit and make quick decisions. So I don't think the general public is well informed on it. But hopefully this is a step in that direction. Just one comment with the survey. I think we've got, I believe, I can see, I feel, I'm worried. I'd like those to be all the same, though some of them are a bit emotive on both sides. And if we can get consistency with the way each statement is put forward, I would prefer that. Other than that, happy with the survey.
Councillor Kendi.
Yeah, I suppose we're going to have to hook into it either way, regardless of your request to pause or not. I don't think the current COVID climate or whatever, the people in Wellington are going to let that be an excuse for not doing it. In terms of perhaps a referendum or district-wide or whatever, I like to think that the Westland population are quite good in terms of engaging with local elections or whatever, so perhaps they'll be quite good in giving us the information required. Yeah, I'm not too sure whether road shows or workshops or whatever are really a good way of getting the information out there, and whether we can or not in the time required, I don't know. I definitely need to bombard the papers and get as much info out there, social media, whatnot, but yeah, hook into it.
And Councillor Hart.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. Yeah, I definitely agree the community should be consulted, because it'll have different effects on different communities. So yeah, the more, and hopefully we get a reasonable response from it. So I definitely support the engagement.
Well, just to wrap it up, my phone rings constantly all day, in half the night. And I haven't had anyone who's rung me and said, this is a great idea. So I think it's one of the dumbest things I've ever seen come out of Wellington. And it is something that the people of New Zealand will have the ultimate say. And I wouldn't underestimate at all the people of Westland, because they will have a very strong view on this matter. And I think the number of returns that you get will be significant. So moving on there.
Your Worship, Councillor Hartshorn, you've missed out. If you want to.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Oh, no, just, yeah, Your Worship, just from what I see from Waimak right through to Westland, South Westland, everybody's talking about it. And like you just said, I haven't heard anyone that's in favour of it. Road shows, I haven't seen a road show really work in the South Westland yet. That's, yeah, I think the media and the papers are the way to go.
Yeah, it'd be the most significant issue that local government has ever had to deal with. I mean, there are some councils that well over a third of their assets are going to disappear, and millions of dollars in surplus cash flow from the supply of water. So the impacts are, the why muck around with it if it's not broken? I think that was a pretty good statement. Would someone like to move that council receives the report, and B, that council engages with its communities regarding the proposals on Three Waters reform? Do I have a mover? Councillor Hartshorn, Councillor Kennedy. All those in favour? Thank you. We'll now move to moving into the public excluded session. I'd like to thank sincerely all of those that linked in to watch today's council meeting. I hope if you've got any questions, you'll go straight to your councillor and ask him or her about it. They're very, very well informed. And I'd like to now move that council moves into the public excluded section and invite a councillor to second that. Councillor Hart, thank you. All those in favour? We're now moving into public excluded. We'll allow a couple of minutes while Diane resets us, and thank you very much.